Today we've got a great revenge story against an ex-wife's conniving scheme. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, selling on Facebook, lowballed, accepted their offer, and had them meet me at the local pub. When I list something on Facebook Marketplace, I do it with the intention of selling it basically right away. What does this mean? It means my price is low, sometimes too low, and firm. I don't budge on the price, but that's never mattered. They always buy it at full price anyway. I absolutely hate getting 50 "is it still available" messages. When I get one of those, I just delete and ignore. A few days ago, I was selling a set of new takeoff tires and wheels. MSRP was in the $2,500 range. Used prices were in the $1,500 to $2,000 range. I listed these at $1,000. Within an hour, I had probably 20 messages about them. My response is always the same. The price is the price. I will not hold them. First come, first serve. One of the guys who messaged me offered $250. These are a slow sell at $2,000, but a near instant sell at $1,000. There is no world where $250 was an appropriate offer. So I told him that. My word for word, punctuation for punctuation response to his offer was no. But that did not stop him. He justified his offer by sending several listings showing other tires, etc., so I blocked him and moved on. Fast forward 10 minutes, and I get another message from a different Facebook account with the same offer. This guy was now using a second Facebook account, so I blocked this second account. And then he did it with a third account. I was done at this point. Clearly I couldn't win just by blocking and moving on. This guy was relentless. His strategy was literally to annoy the living crap out of you until you just said yes. And blocking his accounts wouldn't work. Who knows how many accounts this guy had. And so I did what any other sane person would do and accepted his $250 offer. I told him I would take his $250 offer, but that he would have to meet me later that night as I was currently busy. He said that he was a 2-hour drive away from me and asked to meet halfway. I said no. He was eager to make a quick buck off of me, so agreed to drive to me. There's a street in our town that has a few pubs on it. 3 of these pubs are within about a half mile of each other, kind of set up so you park on the street and walk between them. And these pubs are usually busy by 11 p.m. By busy, I mean there is 0 parking anywhere. You usually have to park at least half a mile away and walk to the pub, and so I did what any sane person would do and set the meet for 11 p.m. at one of these local pubs. I sent him a message at around 10:45 p.m. and asked him to meet me in the pub, and we could walk over to my truck and grab the wheels and tires. He messages me at 11 p.m. and told me he was out front. There is no way to park out front without blocking the entire street, and traffic is usually heavy at 11 p.m., meaning he couldn't just wait out front, he would have to move. So again, I did what any sane person would do and waited until about 10 minutes after 11 p.m. to message back. In that 10 minutes, I received no less than 20 messages from him. These messages painted an amazing picture as he grew more and more frustrated, as he sent screenshots of his location, asking if he was in the right place, as he kept telling me he would drive down the block and circle back. You get the point. 10 minutes later, I sent a simple, "Sorry about that, didn't see your message. I'm at the bar in XYZ pub. Just park and come in. I'll grab you a beer." He accepted the offer, parked what I assume was half a mile plus away, and walked to the pub. 10 more minutes of me not responding and 20 plus messages later, I sent a simple, "Sorry about that, didn't see your message. I walked down to PDQ pub, probably 500 yards away, thinking you may be there. Meet me down here?" Fast forward until right around midnight. I had made this man drive 2 hours one way, walk at least 2 miles, go into all 3 pubs, and curse me every way to Sunday. And he was still 2 hours from home. So I did what any sane person would do and turned off Facebook notifications and went to bed. Oh, and the wheels and tires sold earlier that day for exactly $1,000. I've heard a number of stories similar to this one where somebody is making a terrible offer, or they even also just wasted your time. Like they actually did agree to buy for a great price, and then they just don't show up while saying, "Oh, I'm on the way." But I don't know if I've ever heard of one that made the person show up so far away, get out of their car, walk around, yank them back and forth, and only then let the realization hit in on them. Sly Fox in a Cave wrote, "As a sane person, my final response would have been, 'Sorry, but I couldn't wait any longer and had to go home. It's pretty late. You understand, right? Let's try again tomorrow, same time.' Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. That said, our next story is partner told not qualified for a job until they needed him to fill in. Took a year, but the revenge was oh so sweet. Many years ago, partner, 40-year-old male, wanted to apply for a project management job in his current company. Would be a promotion and a salary upgrade. The division head where the job was located told him not to bother applying as he wasn't qualified. Background: partner had same qualifications as person leaving. He had previously blocked division head from illegally using funds. Lord forbid he told them no. When they tried to go over his head, company supervisor also told them no, as what they wanted to do was illegal, backing up my partner. Fast forward a year later, the person they hired for the job had to go on medical leave for 3 to 4 months. In a meeting between partners section and division head, one who told him not to bother applying for position, he stated partner could just fill in to do the job while other person was gone. In front of everyone from both his company and all the division bigwigs, partner said in a completely calm, expressionless voice, "You told me last year I wasn't qualified to do the job, so not to even bother applying as you'd make sure I didn't get it. However, if you now feel I am now qualified, I'll be happy to do the job temporarily at the higher salary." The room was silent. The director of the division looked at the head and asked, "Did you actually say that?" It's illegal and a potential lawsuit, by the way. When the guy stuttered and tried to explain, basically admitting he did say that, the director held up his hand to stop him from incriminating himself and the division and told the guy, "We will discuss this later. Meanwhile, you will be taking over the position duties while the person is on medical leave." After everyone from their division left, my partner's boss told him she about bust from keeping the laughter in at the guy's face and wished she could have been a fly on the wall for that conversation. There's not too many more satisfying things than being able to call somebody out so blatantly like that, just embarrassing somebody who purposely was trying to keep you down. Nage 2020 wrote, "Similar thing happened to me. Was overlooked for a position I was in line for at the company I work at because someone high up had a family member that needed a job. They expected me to train the new guy. I told them if I wasn't good enough to do the job, I wasn't qualified to train anyone." Our next story is, my ex had the foresight to plan out her devilish revenge on me many months in advance. My ex and I have known each other since we were teenagers and have always been close. We're very different people though, so we never gave a relationship a try. That changed when we were both in our mid-30s, and both ended up being single right around the same time, shortly before winter. Bad timing. Going through a breakup and drinking together while huddling up on the couch for warmth led to more, and we ended up dating. Yes, it was a disaster. 3 years of constant fighting until we finally called it quits. You'd be surprised how effectively you can hurt someone's feelings when you've known their wishes and deepest, darkest secrets for 20 plus years. We were both really hurt by what we said to each other. I did what I do in these situations and went on a small holiday for a few days. Perfect time for her to gather stuff from my house and move out. That's when she did something that really freaked with my head many months into the future. One of my favorite hobbies is doing jigsaw puzzles. It calms me down after work and I can listen to audiobooks for hours while doing it. And I don't mean some 500-piece puzzle that you can do in an evening. I mean huge puzzles with 15,000 plus pieces. Largest was 42,000. I've got a whole room in my basement with a huge custom-built table just for puzzles. It's great because the puzzle can just stay on the table for weeks or months while I plug away at it, and there's no chance of actually bumping pieces off the table and vacuuming them up. Why is that hobby important? Because she knew how much I enjoy it. She could have just smashed the puzzle I was working at time or destroyed the table when she moved out. But no, she simply grabbed a big handful of pieces. Not enough to be noticeable right away, but you're gonna notice when you're getting close to finishing. Many months later, we still weren't talking all that much. We just needed time to cool off. I kept doing my jigsaw puzzle and got close to finishing it. That's when I started to notice that some pieces were definitely missing. Being the nerd that I am, I complained about it on our friends chat group. I blamed the manufacturer for making a low-quality puzzle. My ex is in that group and saw my messages. Barely 10 minutes went by when she sent a single picture without a comment. It was one of my puzzle pieces with a small note next to it that read, €5. The chat was erupting with laughter, cheers, and my frustration. She didn't write anything, A day goes by and another picture appears. This time the piece was laying on the floor in her basement with a 10 euros next to it. This went on for days. Every day a new picture in a new location with ever-increasing ransom demands. She put real effort into messing with me. Can you imagine how frustrating it is when every day at the exact same time you know what's going to be posted in your friend's chat group? You open the app and yep, there it is, your friends laughing their butts off at your misfortune. She could have just thrown those pieces away, but she kept them for months just to torture me. Kudos to her, a truly devilish move and I really respect. In retrospect, it actually makes me chuckle. We've patched things up since then and we're back to being really good friends. The hostages were exchanged for a few bottles of wine. Nobody can freak with your head like your friends. I mean, if there was ever going to be somebody that's going to enact some kind of really good revenge that just doesn't even necessarily have to do real damage, but just hit you in the feels, hit you in your emotions, it's gonna be that person that you've known for 20 plus years that knows everything. It's also kind of heart-shattering to hear about friendships or relationships that had gone on for so long and then fell apart. Kind of awkward when you're still in the same group chat too. Oddphrase 5808 wrote, "The hostages were exchanged for a few bottles of wine broke me." I love this for you guys, that you were able to resolve your differences and save your friendship. Your ex is genius at petty revenge. Never upset her again, or you'll drive yourself insane just wondering what she might do. Our next story is never splitting the check again. I've been with my husband nearly 6 years and married for almost 3. Our entire relationship, family birthday dinners with my in-laws have always been a mess. They never decide where to go or what time until the very last minute. Sometimes they even change the location or time of day, so even reservations can become useless because you need most of the party present. People are typically late, not 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes even an hour, and thus have others waiting to start eating. But the most painful part of these events has always been paying for the check at the end of the meal. Typically what would happen is everyone splits the check in whatever way so the birthday human doesn't have to pay for their meal. No one ever says, "Hey everyone, we're splitting the check evenly no matter what," or "pay for yourself and a little extra for the birthday person." Nothing, just left to figure it out at the end of the night. They'll offer to share, I think in the hopes that it makes it more attractive to share the bill. We were once asked to pay $60 each on an approximately $300 bill when all we ordered was 2 $15 meals and water, while everyone else went ham and bought whatever they wanted plus alcohol. When they asked what we were doing birthday dinner-wise for my husband and I, we picked a restaurant and it was a great meal. My husband ordered a couple of appetizers to share with the table, which everyone partook in. When the bill came, my brother-in-law said, "Let's see how much we pay, so maybe you guys don't pay." I was flabbergasted all of a sudden. It was a "we will see" and not automatic. We ended up paying for our entire bill, including apps and drinks. I was really upset because time and time, we have paid more than our fair share. But when it was our turn, no one was willing to follow tradition. When my sister-in-law's birthday dinner came along, we decided to only pay what we ordered and let them figure out the rest. My in-laws were not only ordering alcohol and meals, but also a bottle of sparkling water, which I've never seen them do in the years I've known them. We took the tablet when we were done eating and chatting, paid for our meals plus tip, and left. I'm so glad that we decided that's how we'll handle these dinners from now on. So much annoying stress removed. I do think if it's ever even a question, you might as well just go ahead and make it known early on. I'm just gonna cover what I order. I'm not really in the business of financing other people's big splashy dinners with alcohol. Cthulhu's Queen wrote, "To me, as a server, when I hear split checks, I ask who's on what check or if all is individual. I am a freak of nature and will most definitely give a table of 20 all separate checks if that's what they want. I ask at the beginning for large parties. No one ever gets charged more than they should on my watch." Our next story is steal my parking slot? Goodbye, key slots. This happened around 20 years ago. Me and my fam came from a visit to the cemetery. It was a holiday, traffic was horrible, and we went straight to a restaurant and waited for a parking slot to open up. We were waiting for around 10 minutes, then a car went out and I was readying to park in the vacated slot. Of course, there was a butthead who forced himself into that slot. A couple of people witnessed what happened and told him I was waiting for that slot, but he didn't care. Fortunately, I was able to get another slot shortly. When we got down and seated at the restaurant, guess what? The butthead was on the opposite table. I almost went there to slap the butthat's bald head, but my fam held me back. He can't even look in my direction. Probably guilty. Here's where my revenge comes in. 20 years ago, keyless entry cars were not that popular, so you have to use your keys to get in. He drove a station wagon. I grabbed a couple of toothpicks, inserted it into the front doors, and broke the toothpicks, so the butthead can only get access from the rear door. I came back and finished my meal. As soon as everyone in my fam is done, I told them to get in the car right away. The timing is perfect. We were leaving the lot while Butthead was scratching his head on how to get in his car. Hope that locksmith's fee was worth it. Man, I think I'm just old enough to remember a time where I was very little, where you did have to physically enter your key, you didn't have the fob. It's really not all that big of a deal, it's a key, it's a lock. It's not very surprising that they had to do that before fobs, but I do certainly appreciate the convenience. Look Away Please 510 wrote, "This is exactly why you don't do what Butthead did. You're basically asking for damage to your car when you do." This next story is Girly Petty Revenge Drama from College Times. So this happened around 10 years back when I was in college doing my final semester of my master's. Yes, I'm a millennial. First, a little bit of background. I was living in the hostel accommodation provided by the college and was sharing my room with 2 other female college mates. One was in the same levels of master's as me, let's call her A, while the other one was doing her bachelor's, let's call her B. B was new to our room, and me and A had been friends and roomies for 2 years now without any issues. I used to be a minimalist, but I had decent grooming hardware of good brands. B asked me once to try out my hair straightener, and I let her. She never asked me to use it again after that because she would use it without asking me. I am generally a super chill person, and as long as my straightener was available to me when I needed it, I didn't mind. Likewise, B had started using a bunch of my other tools and stuff without asking me about it. I didn't raise an issue or even have any issue with it because, like I said before, if I have it when I need it, I don't mind sharing. I would travel home very often, almost every weekend, since it was a 3-hour travel by the local bus. One time when I was back to my hostel, I noticed my favorite shirt missing. I loved that shirt and wore it quite often, hence I noticed it missing. I got to the common bathroom to relieve myself, and I see my shirt bundled up and lying in the corner like a wet wiping rag. Asian thing. I was sure I had folded it and kept it in my wardrobe when I left for home. That very day, I tell my friend, classmate of A, about this bizarre thing about my shirt. And she asked me if it was the blue oversized tee I always wear, and I said yes because it was. Then she proceeds to tell me how she saw B wear my tee and parade around during the weekend, and that she had thought I'd let her, B, borrow my clothes as well. I absolutely lost my crap. I hate sharing clothes, cosmetics, toiletries, and stuff that touches my skin directly. This jerk, B, thought it would be okay to open my wardrobe and wear my things, and then throw it like a rag in the bathroom corner. She didn't even have the decency to wash it and keep it back. Now, B also had a lot of nice things as well, particularly her dresses that seemed quite expensive. She used to keep them in a separate suitcase under her bed. All I had to do was wait. I purchased a good amount of castor oil and waited. At the end of the final semester, she had left her precious suitcase unlocked. A day before I was clearing out my room, I emptied my stash of castor oil on all her dresses. I made sure that each and every dress got a good amount of castor oil bath. Then I folded them as they were and kept it all back. I bet she didn't even check her clothes for a couple of days. That was a good long time for the stain to become pretty permanent. I feel very proud of it. No one should take anyone's nice gestures for granted. I definitely wouldn't say that I think what OP did was the right thing to do, but I can't blame them because I would be just as frustrated, especially as a person who would want to get confrontational in a situation like that, but I'm not a very confrontational person, I just don't deal well with that. But I think something like this could conjure up some good yelling from me. Coder Joe 1 wrote, "Do you believe she will abstain from borrowing other people's clothing now?" Our next story is prepaid postage. Do you ever get those solicitations in the mail with prepaid postage for a return envelope? About 40 years ago, I received a solicitation from an organization which was formed to attempt to overturn a certain Supreme Court decision which I supported. The letter asked for a contribution and said the contributor could save the organization money by putting a stamp on the envelope so they wouldn't have to pay postage. Instead, I bent up a metal coat hanger and placed it in the envelope. If you've guessed which US Supreme Court decision they opposed, you can figure out why I used a coat hanger. This way, the organization has to pay for extra postage for the coat hanger. My hope was that the coat hanger would have some effect on the conscience of whoever opened the letter. Joke's on me, because the Supreme Court recently reversed the decision this organization opposed. Luckily, all my daughters live in states where women are not denied essential health care. For something as divisive as political or even, a lot of times in a situation like this, religious beliefs, you're kind of gambling doing this paid postage return envelope, hoping that people aren't going to just abuse it. I guess most people usually just aren't petty enough to go to the effort. Read More First wrote, "For a long time, I would shred everything but the return envelope, stuff all the shredding in the return envelope, then mail it back. All those visa applications." Our next story is Plane Deboarding Courtesy. As many of you may be aware, there is an unwritten rule/common courtesy when getting off your flight. You simply wait until passengers in the rows in front of you have made their way into the aisle and exit, and then you get out when it's your turn. I already get annoyed at people who stand up and grab their carry-ons immediately after the plane parks, but this flight was different. The front of the plane started deboarding, and as soon as one of the early standers would see an opening, they would cut off the rows in front of them, enjoy their small victory of getting off the plane a few minutes sooner. After witnessing this happen a few times, I was ready to do something about it. There were only a few rows left until it was my turn, and I can already see a few more of the early standers eagerly awaiting their opportunity to cut in front of people. To make matters worse, there were passengers in my row who were clearly in no rush to get off the plane, so these cutters could sneak their way past after me. As soon as I got up, I blocked the aisle with my body and asked the other passengers in my row if they needed help with their bags. One by one, I slowly got their carry-ons out of the overhead bins and waited for each one to go on their way. Then I turned to the row opposite of mine and did the same for them. Probably only took around 45 seconds total, but felt great/petty knowing that the cutters were unable to cut off at least my entire row. I just wonder how many of these people are either people who just don't understand the courtesy versus people who are choosing to specifically be inconsiderate and think me first. Because realistically, you get off the plane 2, 3, 4 minutes earlier. What difference does that make? You probably still got a 30-minute drive to wherever you're going, so who cares if you get there in 30 minutes or 35 minutes? Plus, most people are getting off just to go straight to the baggage area. Like, congrats, you got off 3 minutes earlier to the place where we're both going to still be standing for the next 5 minutes till our bags come out. Silly Confused wrote, "I do stand up, but I stay right in front of my seat. It actually saves the people behind me time, because if I don't get up early, I stumble down the aisle. My legs need time to adapt to standing after more than 30 minutes, so I stand." This next story is Controlling Librarian. Took my students to the library, and one of my students who has anxiety lost a small piece of paper. He asked for a new one, and the librarian refused. Student came to me anxious, asking for help. We looked in the areas he had been and couldn't find it. At this point, my student is close to tears. I wait my turn and ask the librarian if I can use one of the papers no one wanted for anxious student. He said no. After thinking about it, I announced to my class that anyone who could find it would get a reward. Complete chaos. Librarian tried to quiet them down. Didn't work. I didn't help. Librarian announced that he would look later. My students kept running around looking. Chaos continued. After about 10 minutes, it was found and we all cheered. I could have easily quieted them down at any time, but freak that over-controlling noob. Your little rules should not be more important than an excellent student with anxiety being stressed. I'm right there with OP. If I'm in that situation and one of my students has lost something and they think it's definitely in this area, I'm not listening to some crappy librarian that says, "I'll look for it later, stop it, quiet down." I'd be like, forget that, we're gonna look around and try to find this dang thing, chill out. I hated any faculty like that when I was growing up in school. I remember in elementary school, we had to check into the library using rulers. You would just carry it around to kind of show that you were checked in. I remember playfully holding it up and saying to a friend or a classmate, "Let's fight with them like swords." Just the librarian hearing that, didn't see anything, we didn't bang the rulers together or anything. They said it was unacceptable, it was foolish, not library appropriate, kicked me out, refused to let me even check out any books. So my teacher was upset because it's like 2nd or 3rd grade and you're supposed to have a book. Scold me and make it a learning experience. Don't kick me out and refuse to allow me to read. Rorschach wrote, I once lost a book in the library, elementary school. I was in tears. I went to the bathroom, and then suddenly my book was gone. I've always been meticulous with my things, so the fact that I lost my library book in a library was confusing as heck to me. I panicked and told the librarian. She helped me look, but we didn't find it. She just smiled at me and said, well, I guess the book went on an adventure of its own. They later found it in a classmate's book bag. They had wanted to check it out, but when I did it first, they got mad, so they just hid my book from me. But that little phrase still pops into my head when I can't find something, and it really helps even as someone who is nearly 30 now. So screw that librarian. I get not wanting to give kids a million pieces of paper, but nothing is worth making an anxious kid even more anxious. Our next story is turn the tables on my ex-wife's attempt to make me back out last minute from coaching children's t-ball. About a year out from divorce, ex-wife has been acting petty and childish to say the least, tries to make me look bad any attempt she gets. My young son played t-ball last year and I volunteered to be the coach. Really enjoyed it, but my work responsibilities and schedule changed before this season and I simply could not commit to do it again. I became good friends with the guy running the league and let him know before the signups even started as a heads up. Was disappointed, but not much to do. What I was able to do was volunteer to get to the field super early Saturday before the game started to set them up. Chalk line the batter's boxes, foul lines, put out bases, etc. 3 fields total, which he was extremely grateful for. A few weeks before the season was supposed to start, they were unfortunately short a couple coaches and were sending out some desperation emails to all the parents. My ex knew my situation and apparently thought going onto the website and basically fraudulently volunteering me to coach would be a great way to inconvenience me, make me look bad by having to back out, etc. So she did just that. Buddy running the league called me, very confused. In order to register, you have to make a username and password. Username is just your email, so after a few minutes of looking through the registration, we worked out what happened as her email was in the account name. Ultimately, he decided to put his kid on my son's team and be the coach, on top of everything else he was doing. He was ticked at my ex himself though, because this stunt could have set them back finding a legit coach if they needed to, possibly delaying the league. Here's where I came up with the petty revenge. He sends the official email out to all of the parents of the league with the rosters and coaches for all 10 teams. Except for our kids' team, instead of listing himself, I tell him to list my ex, puts her name and contact info, etc., and says to expect further info from each coach individually. She emails him back once she notices to point out the mistake, saying it should have been me instead, but he ignores it. He sends her all of the clearances coaches need to pass, asks for times she can come to pick up equipment, the whole 9 yards. After a couple of days, parents of the team apparently start emailing her, asking for info on when the season starts and when practice will be and all that. Eventually, he does reply back, playing dumb, telling her she is the one who volunteered, as it was her username that registered, and knew it wasn't supposed to be me as he'd spoken to me months earlier and knew I wasn't able to do it this year. Put her in an awkward spot because she either had to admit what she did or feign some BS ignorance and claim a miscommunication, which everyone knew was nonsense as we were divorced. After she flat out says she can't coach and she isn't sure what to tell him, he sends out another email to the entire league which says, due to the coach of our kids' team name backing out at the very last minute, I have no choice but to take on coaching the team myself, on top of the rest of the responsibilities. Moving forward, we ask that coaches do not volunteer unless they plan on fulfilling that commitment. He didn't mention her by name, but everyone saw the rosters and knew he was talking about her. She texted me a few weeks later, once the season started, about how my buddy is a jerk for doing that to her due to a glitch in the registration software, as multiple people have approached and asked her not so nicely what happened, and she knows she's getting looks from people during the games. What a satisfying text it was to receive. That's a bold move, deciding to go full on and just call her out like that, put her name on the flyers or whatever, and all the information handed out to parents. But you have to agree, it seemed pretty darn effective, and I'm sure it's going to curb any kind of that behavior in the future. Can I just say though, if you're going to commit some kind of revenge, not necessarily a crime, don't do it using your own email, especially if it's an identifiable one to you. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.